Good to see you all. If you are looking for enthrallment, excitement, rocketry, sex magic, and Ed the Techie, you've come to the right place. We're going down a deep one tonight with Jack Parsons, or to give him his full proper name, Marvel Whiteside Parsons. Ed, good to see you,
Sure.
mate.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back, and
It's
nice to see you, and
great.
nice to see everyone in the chat. And yeah, it's great.
It's great, it's great, it's great. So, shall we start off with Marvel Whiteside Parsons, born in 1914 in California to a wealthy family, and he grew up quite pampered. His parents divorced in 1919, so he'd be 5, and then his mum and him went to live with his maternal parents, and they were quite well off. So he spent a lot of time there. And then he started playing with blowing things up in the back garden. And he used to steal a little bit of gunpowder and stuff like that. And him and his friends started to make rockets. And this is how he came about enthralled with the use of rocketry. We also got a little bit into the occult at that time as well.
Just a little.
Just a little, yeah. Because it said he summoned a demon, isn't it?
Well, there's all sorts of different. This is he's one of these really strange characters who is kind of larger than life because he had this very well known, kind of very responsible job building the American space race. Because I mean, he was one of the guys who started JPL by nearly blowing up their dorm. And I mean, he's fascinating because he then, on the other side, he had this complete occult life, and he was a devotee of Aleister Crowley and the whole sex magic thing, and balancing those two things off. I find you have to have a super scientific brain to be a rocket scientist, which is basically what he was, and at the same time believing in the occult and stuff that's not really very scientific. Although I guess there's people out there who would argue with that point, but he's a fascinating character. I didn't really know that much about him until um, I was doing a little bit of research for the podcast before we started. But yeah, it's very mixture of darkness and light somehow. It's very strange. Um, and the explosion that killed him, equally strange. It's yeah, the whole thing, because I mean he was only what, 36? No, 37.
38, 38, I think, when he died.
1952.
Yeah.
And that's a mysterious, massive home explosion that was ruled accidental, but his wife never accepted the official explanation. Um, so yeah, very very sort of colourful character, and some of his private life leaves a lot to be desired because it kind of then starts to tie in with some of the connections between other people at NASA and I mean obviously NASA is a supposedly reputable space agency, although some of the alternative acronyms there are, like not a space agency or never a straight answer is another good one. Um, so yeah, I mean that's it, it's a great topic for conversation this evening. And yes, one thing that I found rather unfortunate is his right forearm and right foot were found in the debris, indicating he was in close proximity to the blast. Oh, yeah, I guess. I don't know. You wouldn't. I guess if you were going to kill yourself, you wouldn't necessarily want to willingly amputate parts of your body. So I mean, it's pretty safe to say that he did actually die in it.
Right. I think this might be better now because apparently Phantom Power was off.
And that's why you were so loud now. That explains. So let me just turn you down.
Yeah, Phantom Power should have been turned on. So sorry about that. How is it now, people? There you go, says Ben. Thank you, Ben. Yes, right. Okay, let's go back then. Let's go back to the very beginning. So Jack Parsons grew up quite wealthy, and he was doing all right. He didn't go to university as such, but he ended up at Caltech because him and his pals, who were well, they later got a nickname called the Suicide Club because they did have an unfortunate they had an unfortunate habit of blowing things up and actually not themselves at this point. So they were into rocketry, and rocketry wasn't a very popular thing in those times. And this would be the 1920s. Rocketry was seen as something that happened in the 1800s. You know, the armies used rocketry before the advent of artillery. And when artillery came along, it replaced rocketry, and everyone just did away with it because rocketry had been around since the early Chinese armies, and artillery replaced it all. So they didn't really see a need for rocketry. But Parsons Parsons read a lot of Jules Verne, and it really influenced him. And he thought, yeah, we can go to the moon, we can go to the stars, we can go and explore space using rockets. And they decided to start working on rockets. And his pal Ed Foreman, they were a great team. They worked together. They were firing rockets out the back of his grandparents' house in Pasadena, which was on Millionaires Row, I think. So that would probably get down really well. And then they ended up they rocked up to Caltech, right? And they had another student there called Molina, who was an undergraduate student at Caltech, and they rocked up to Caltech and got in league with one of the professors called Vermeer, I think, a German guy who had left Germany before the Nazis took over. And they got in league with him. And despite Parsons having no real formal education, no degree or anything, he effectively ended up with a rocket lab at Caltech. And they were in they're in one of the buildings, I think it was the aeronautics building or something, and they had like a string from the roof all the way to the basement, and they were flying rockets up and down this string. So they were building rockets, attached them to the string, with the hoops, and then firing them up the entire length of this 4 story building until they blew up one of the rockets. So they got flung out the building, and they just built themselves a jerry-rigged, ramshackle corrugated iron construction just outside the building where they did all their stuff. And one day, while trying to mix rocket fuel, because that was Jack's passion, he was trying to make a liquid rocket fuel. He mixed it wrongly and then blew himself out the building. So they had great fun. Now, how many 15-year-olds do you know, though, Ed? How many 15-year-olds spent 2 or 3 hours on the phone to Werner von Braun every night in 1933?
None.
Yeah.
Well, even the idea that someone like von Braun would even be interested in talking to a 15-year-old is it speaks of a highly intelligent mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they did really well, and Parsons and his crew, they actually came up with. Well, I don't know if you know, but there's a thing called JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, and people used to call it the Jack Parsons Labs because he was one of the founders, effectively, because him and his friends created a company called Aerojet because what they did was they perfected the fuel, and they perfected this Aerojet as a booster for aircraft. And this in the run up to the Second World War, they had this thing and it halved the takeoff distance for military aircraft. So you strapped it to the wings, fired it up. It was basically a solid fuel booster, and it halved the takeoff distance. So they could use it on short runways, and they could get ships off of aircraft carriers without even using a catapult. So the Navy ordered something like 400,000 units of these things. So Jack was actually rolling in money. Now, he had been destitute at one point, and he was rolling in money, and he bought this house in Orange Grove in Pasadena, and they called it the Parsonage. This thing had 11 bedrooms, and he rented each bedroom out for $100 a month. Now, $100 a month in 1939 or whatever, it's a fairly substantial amount of money. So he was creaming in about 1,700 a month. And then some of the people, he actually put an advert in the local paper saying, if you are mundane, do not apply because you will be rejected. I want bohemians, I want artists, I want scientists, I want people who are extraordinary, people who are extrovert. I don't want the mundane. You will be rejected. So he attracted all these cooks to the parsonage, and they were having a great time. And that's where he met. Well, that's when he had already married his first wife Helen, who he'd met, and then her sister moved into the parsonage, and that was when all things started to go a little bit awry, because at that point he got quite intrigued with a thing called Ordo Templis Orientis.
Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, which was Aleister Crowley's Californian branch of his religion. And this guy, Walter Smith, who was Aleister's kind of right-hand man in California, he moved into the parsonage as well. And they were having all sorts of things because they believed in things like sex magic, and you could release certain ideas and things through having sex with each other. And what's his name? This guy, Walter Smith, started having sex with Helen, I think. And well, okay, I'm a little bit jealous, but you know what? I'm just going to do her sister. So he starts doing her sister, Sarah Northolt. And that was a mistake, because this girl, and I say girl because she was only 17, which in California at that time is statutory assault, So,
So pedo Parsons.
well, yeah, technically, but apparently she was a complete and utter sex fiend. Right? She just wouldn't let it go, and she was either schizophrenic or psychotic or something, but she was a complete and utter nutter.
God.
So Jack's taken up with her. This other guy's doing his wife, and then who moves in? L. Ron Hubbard. Right. You can't make this shit up. This is incredible. You couldn't make this shit up. So L. Ron Hubbard moves into the parsonage, and he decides he's taking up with Sarah. So then Jack's left with nobody. So Jack's just tinkering around with his rockets all night while these bunch are doing each other left, right, and centre. But then L. Ron Hubbard was a bit of a con man.
Just a little.
So he comes up with a plan that he's going to go to the East Coast and he's going to buy 3 big yachts, 3 big schooners or something, and sail them back through the Panama Canal round to California, and then they'll sell them. So he asks Jack to put up the money, and Jack gives him 400 grand. 400 grand in 1939, right? And it's like, oh my God, where did he? This is all the money he's getting from the military for the boost assist, the Aerojet product. So L. Ron goes off with Sarah to Miami and buys 3 big boats, and then he takes off in the biggest boat, and they're like, he's not coming back. He's not coming back. He's just going to go, and he's not going to come back, because he then let them know that he was intending to cruise the world and evangelize his new religion. So apparently Jack, who had flown out or driven out or whatever to Miami, because obviously at this point he thought, hold on, I'm going to get nothing back here, not even a boat, decided to conduct a ritual along with Marjorie Cameron. This is the red-headed girl, the red-headed, green-eyed girl. That part of the Ordo Templis thing had said a red-headed, green-eyed girl will be your muse, and she will come along, and she did. This girl turns up, and Jack's besotted with her. So this girl, Marjorie Cameron, and Jack go to Miami, do this satanic ritual, and a squall comes up, scalps the boat, knocks the mast off it, and the boat gets driven back into Miami and brought up on the rocks, where the police then arrest L. Ron Hubbard for stealing all his money. So this all goes to court. And Sarah, who's part of it, the nasty nymph, right? She says, well, you can't sue me. And Jack's going, well, why can't I? Because you were part of it. And she's going, because if you sue me, I'm going to press charges against you for what you did when I was 17. And he's like, yeah, okay, fair point. You're out. So she gets out of it. So L. Ron Hubbard goes to court, but then they settle out of court, and I think he had like $3,500 left. And gave that to Jack, and that was it, settled. I mean, this is nuts. This is just nuts, isn't it? It's incredible.
It is completely mental, and I mean, because Robert Heinlein, the science fiction author.
Oh, there's more about him as well.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Well,
Carry on.
because he wrote a book called Stranger in a Strange Land, and the sort of house and the sex magic. There's I mean, I don't want to go into. Him up, but when he comes back to Earth, they realize that he's actually got, because of how the Martians have raised him, he has what we would consider to be not quite superpowers, but he has a massive degree of control over his own body, to the point of being able to make his hair grow or his muscles grow or whatever. And he kind of creates this cult. And the cult sort of, there's echoes of that. You can imagine if Heinlein was associated with people like L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons and all of the kind of crazy women that were around them as well. You can see where some of the stories in that book come from, but it's a great read.
Yeah. Right, so that's good to know. So thank you for that, chat room. Apparently there was no sound when I put the slides up. So we're still learning the software, so obviously I think we've got to add ourselves to scenes before that happens. So my apologies for that, people. We won't do that again. The slides were just pictures of the people that we were talking about, so I can just skip them this time, and we'll make sure that we get it right the next time. But yeah, so I mean, it really does. It reads like a book, and then of course you've got Ray Bradbury. He's living there, right? I mean, Ray Bradbury, big sci-fi writer, and a good friend of him, apparently liked him. And then Robert Heinlein, he's living in the parsonage. He didn't really get on with anyone else, and Parsons didn't really like Heinlein. And in fact, later on, when Parsons runs into trouble with the FBI, because Parsons, like myself, was a bit of a Marxist. In his younger life, although he moved away from that towards libertarianism, and I think I validated that last night on the stream when I did the political compass test, and I am indeed a left-bearing libertarian now. So Ben, believe it or not, Ed, is a right-bearing libertarian.
Right. Okay.
So things have gone awry. But anyway, so Heinlein's there. And so, yeah, so Jack gets involved with the FBI because they're investigating. The local police has been investigating him because of his Marxist tendencies, but really that was all kind of done in. And then the national security, because he was supplying all this kit to the army and the navy and whatever, they were looking into him, and the FBI were examining him. And the talk was that Heinlein was an FBI plant. He was working for the FBI, and he was reporting back to them on what Parsons was up to. And that's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
No, not at all, because you would think that someone who, I mean, he was clearly a very intelligent person that would have been extremely useful to Russians or Chinese people or whoever wanted to kidnap him. But potentially with his links to dodgy people, that's another. I mean, if you've got someone that essentially has a lot of power over your rocket industry and is a major military contractor, that's the kind of person that the government would want to keep an eye on. I mean, if he was completely straight-laced and wore kind of heavy glasses and a suit and had one of those pen pockets in his jacket, they probably would have left him alone. But if you're kind of hanging out in weird hippie communes with dodgy people like L. Ron Hubbard and
Alistair Crowley,
yeah,
we haven't got to him yet, have we? Really? But yeah. But then you've got and you've also got the whole what was it? What was I trying to say there? Good grief! Yeah, he was well ahead of the game. These guys were all well ahead of the game. So this is it was late 20s, 30s, and then into the 40s. But they were all into shall we say, creative substances in a big way.
How creative are we talking? Are we talking about
what's
mildly creative or seriously creative?
Oh, we're talking the full way. I mean, what's his name? Crowley was a favourite. He favoured the poppy, He was on that too. He was on that constantly. He was on that. Apparently, he was pumping that into himself 3 or 4 times a day. And latterly, Jack was doing that also. He was into that. But prior to that, he was into the one that, what do you call it, mescaline?
Mescaline. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then LSD, and I mean, they were into everything. I mean, this was before Timothy Leary, well before Timothy Leary, and these guys put him in the shade, I think. So these guys were doing the whole lot.
Well, if you're good at chemicals, and they wouldn't have had the same restrictions on precursors that we have now. Precursors being, it's like here that it's not just, say, ecstasy, for example, but all of the things that you need to actually make one like a pill. All of that stuff is banned or monitored because I mean some of it has legitimate uses.
Yeah.
And I mean in the case of LSD, I think it's the ergotamine, which is the main active component. But back then in the 40s and 50s, that was long before any of the kind of war on drugs. And I mean, I'm not sure if things like cocaine and stuff were still available from chemists in 1940s and 50s. Probably not, but
yeah, I'm not sure. It was. I mean, I don't even know when they took, because they used to have morphine and or opium and cough medicine, didn't they? They had. Oh, yeah. They had. Laudanum was an opiate, I believe, and it was given to children. Crazily enough. And I mean, I remember when I was a kid and when we lived in Hong Kong, and I think I had growing pains, and the doctor used to prescribe codeine for me, and I don't mean paracetamol and codeine. I mean just codeine.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's it. Well, the original Coca-Cola recipe had coca in it. It's not. Yeah, it's not called Coca-Cola for just because they thought it sounded good.
Oh, you're disillusioning me.
Well, you used to be. I mean, you used to be able to get heroin because when Bayer first came out with heroin, it was available in chemists.
Yeah, off the counter. Bloody hell. That's crazy, isn't it?
And so I mean, these guys, and if you put a bunch of smart, scientifically minded people together, and they have access to equipment and chemicals and stuff, and have a have a mind to experiment, you come up
Mhm.
with all sorts of crazy stuff.
But then you've got to factor in the other side of things where when they get once they finish tinkering with the rockets all day, they're then going into these rituals and these satanic pleasures that they're giving each other because they went into that in a big way as well. And I know you said earlier on that can you equate science with what do you call it, with science with
Religion. Well,
religion? But Einstein did, didn't he? I mean,
no,
he was
sure.
very religious.
Hmm.
So I mean, there's no real difference if you believe in some kind of religion. There's no real difference between worshiping the god or the devil, is there? If you believe in one, you should believe in the other. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You would think that rocket scientists would spend all their day and all of their brain space kind of pondering about rockets and chemicals and things like that. It just, I don't know, for a group of kind of super nerds to
Hmm.
be interested in the occult. I'm not. I mean, obviously, people are kind of unique, and everyone does their own thing. I just find it a bit surprising, but that's possibly me being narrow-minded.
Yeah, well, it's maybe I don't know. I think there was a degree of decadence certainly in California at that time because you had Hollywood, and Hollywood was no poster child for equality or at that time it was completely different from what it is now because the casting couch was very much part of the equation. I mean, Hollywood, if you weren't making movies, must have been a right den of iniquity. People like Weinstein and that would have felt quite at home.
I would imagine it still is. I,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
probably is.
I suspect that the accoutrement and
I
the
like that.
places have probably changed, and they all have a lot more money, and it's all a lot more kind of established, and they have their temples and their big houses and all these places where all of this dodgy stuff happens.
Hmm.
Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if the occult stuff is still a
Yeah,
part of all of that.
yeah,
And I mean, there's all sorts of obviously the what is it, the child sex trafficking and all of that horrible
yeah, yeah,
stuff. So I mean, who knows? But it's interesting that because you can kind of understand that it's connected to Hollywood,
hmm,
but for it to be connected to the people who effectively started NASA,
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
JPL, it's just like I said. I mean, we make jokes about rocket scientists. It's like, oh, it's not rocket science. But when you actually have a rocket scientist who isn't just a massive nerd, it's just I don't know. I just find that a bit mind boggling.
yeah. I think I find it quite gratifying that someone like Parsons does this and manages to make these things that become the bedrock for NASA and really for our journey to the moon and or our alleged journey to the moon and our efforts to do low Earth orbit and possibly verge off into space at some point. Because if he hadn't been there and if he hadn't reinvigorated rocketry, it might not have happened, because Werner von Braun might have been laughed out of, he might have been a laughing stock when he got brought back on Operation Paperclip because, yeah, okay, he made the V2 and he made the V1, which caused havoc in London, and really they weren't effective strategic weapons. They were just terror weapons. They were just designed to terrify the population,
Yeah, but once the
because
Americans had come up with the first atomic bomb,
yeah, they wanted the
that
delivery system. Yeah,
I mean that rocket technology would have. I mean, the two are a natural fit. You put one together with the other, and suddenly you have a super powerful weapon. Because
yeah,
don't forget, this rocket technology is not just about NASA. It's also about ballistic missiles
yeah.
and all of that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Which, yeah, it's becoming a more relevant topic, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, okay? Because there's I have, I have a certain. I think I know what's going on. I don't want to disclose it yet because uh, it's difficult to get across on a channel like this.
Hmm.
But anyway,
Anyway, we're here to talk about
yes,
Parsons. Anyway, I wasn't.
well,
I wasn't suggesting we
yeah,
change the subject. I was just
yeah.
alluding to current events.
So, so while L. Ron Hubbard obviously went on to create Dianetics, and then from that, you know, the religion of Scientology came about. Um, so it's like this whole microcosm of society existed in this one house effectively, and it spawned the JPL, which ultimately led to NASA. It had connections to Werner von Braun. Um, Caltech were sponsoring it. The Navy and the Army were putting huge sums of money into it. We got the corporation Aerojet, which was founded by Parsons and Foreman and Molina, who was a student, and that Carmen guy, the the professor. So you know, and Aerojet nowadays is called Aerojet Rocketdyne, isn't it? You know,
Hmm.
it's part of L3 Harris now, I think. But yeah, so it's still a big company, and they still make. I think they made stuff for the space shuttle. So yeah, so Aerojet's still going and still going strong. Von Braun was, yes, he was that Adam. But a lot of the paperclip scientists were, and they were really just given a clean slate because they were allowed to come here and do what they wanted, even though they'd been using allegedly slave labor to do the stuff that they needed to get done in the States, not in the States, in Germany.
Yeah, we covered some of that in our
Mm-hmm.
UFO rabbit hole. But one thing that I found quite interesting that I'm not sure people know is that it was roughly 1,600 scientists that were brought to the US as part of Operation Paperclip,
Mm-hmm.
and just over 700 of those were rocket scientists or people connected to rocketry.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's clearly something that the American government was extremely interested in,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and they weren't very picky and choosy about the sorts of people. Like you said, I mean, we're actually particularly some of those Nazis scientists that came over.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about people who did some
Mm-hmm.
absolutely horrific things, and they were just kind of brushed under the carpet. And until recently, I struggled to get my head around it, but I'm able to get my head around that now, unfortunately. But yeah, it's I mean, it's a testament to how interested they were in rocketry, but it
Mm-hmm.
also makes you wonder what sort of because the Nazis were really into the occult as well, and I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Hitler
Yeah.
was absolutely fascinated with it. So
Yeah.
one
Well.
wonders how much of that occult influence actually came over with paperclip scientists.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Well,
Parsons.
there's a point, Ed. Actually, you've just touched on something. Maybe some of the maybe what's his name, Von Braun, had some interest in the occult and passed it on to Parsons when he was a 15-year-old. I mean, we don't know.
I can, if you give me 2 seconds, I can do a quick check.
And yeah, you're right about the Nazis being into the occult because I mean, one of Hitler's big quests was for the Spear of Destiny, wasn't it? And that's quite why a lot of the Antarctic expeditions took off as well. But yeah, Mengele was a medical doctor though, Emma, so she wasn't really into the rocket side of things. And I think he was tried and executed, wasn't he, at Nuremberg, Mengele?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think yes. From what I can tell, there's no credible evidence that von Braun had any kind of interest in occult practices or beliefs. His family was secular in Germany,
Hmm.
and I mean, he was a scientist and engineer. And from what I can tell, he was completely obsessed with rockets and the idea of going into space and getting to the moon. and that pretty much consumed his entire
Yeah, yeah,
thing. I mean, he doesn't seem like he was very political or religious in any shade. I mean, he doesn't seem like he was sort of mainstream religious either.
yeah.
Um,
So Jeff's view here, at the time the US was behind on rocket tech and saw the benefit. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think we don't know how many went to Russia, but they obviously got a pretty good pick of the scientists as well, because Russian rocketry advanced even quicker than American, didn't it?
Absolutely, and I mean the Russians had a lot of firsts in space travel,
Hmm.
which, as we talked about in the moon
All the
landings,
firsts.
well,
All the
yeah,
firsts.
apart from getting to the moon,
Well,
supposedly.
you know my theory on that
Oh,
one.
you know my theory on that too, John.
Yeah, I think there's a dead Russian on the moon. You know what else there is on the moon, right? There's a crater named after Jack Parsons, but it's on the dark side of the moon. Why?
Maybe well, by all accounts, the dark side of the moon. I mean, if you were the aliens that are obviously have some sort of soap opera, because the conclusion that I've come to is that this planet is actually just a soap opera being enjoyed by aliens. And if you
Big
were said
Brother.
well,
Big
yeah,
Brother.
Big Brother, but on a planetary scale. I mean, hey, look,
Why not?
if you're super advanced aliens, you need super advanced forms of entertainment. I mean, just
Yeah.
your normal soap opera is not it's not going to be enough for
But it's
a
the
bunch of
Sims. It's the Sims, isn't it?
maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you were going to do that, then the dark side of the moon is the perfect place for your secret base and your giant
No, of course it is.
transmitter.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. I was watching something the other night, and it was the guy talking about the Matrix, and he said the one thing the Matrix got wrong, and it always fascinates me when people talk about these things as if they're real, you know. And he said the one thing the Matrix got wrong was that they don't use humans as batteries; they use them as calculating machines, like a human computer.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
I hadn't thought of that.
No, neither had I, and obviously this made me think. That's actually why. Why would you waste all that mental power just using you as a battery when you could actually use you to do relative work? And by running the program, that's exactly what you would be doing. Could you get people to start doing things in the program that were effectively calculations?
So you posit that the matrix is actually still there, and because they still have to keep a certain part of the people's brains active, or they'll just go crazy and die.
Yeah, well, when you're in the matrix, you think you're living a life, don't you?
Hmm.
So why wouldn't you just introduce things into that existence that make you do stuff that's going to benefit the output that people are wanting at the other end? So if you want to try and calculate the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, we'll just put the sim on it,
Hmm.
and let them chunter away for generations, thousands of generations, to see if they can come up with an answer and see if 42 is right.
Yeah, they do. I mean, in terms of the matrix, yeah.
Yeah,
No, okay.
yeah, yeah,
I'm prepared to make the mental leap.
yeah. Yeah, so where were we with Jack? Oh, the, right. So when I think he was only about 22 or something like that, because he was like, the police turned up at Caltech and said, we're looking for a witness that can talk about bombs, because somebody had been blown up. The guy in charge of the LA, the police captain in charge of the LA intel unit had apparently blown up the internal affairs guy that was following them, because the intel unit was completely corrupt. And they turned up at Caltech and asked for someone who could provide expert witness to explosives. And the guy Varma says, I know exactly who to talk to, because Jack used to work for a gunpowder factory and then he worked for an explosives company. So they sent Jack down as the expert witness, and he turned up with basically a pipe bomb. He constructed this what looked like a pipe bomb. And he told the court, this is how it would work and all that. And the court's like, that is that not dangerous? And he's going, no, it's completely deactivated, or it's never been activated. It's just a model. And then after the guy got convicted and Jack went home with a pipe bomb, he took it out to the desert and blew it up because it was real.
You could understand how someone like that might meet a fiery end.
Yeah, you could.
In fact, you kind of wonder how he actually lasted to the ripe old age of 37.
Yeah, I know.
Because I mean, a career / lifetime of blowing things up, summoning demons, engaging in sex magic, and kind
So,
of. I mean, it makes you wonder what kind of crazy stuff they got
right.
up to in their rituals and stuff.
There's some wild stuff. What about making a homunculus?
Homunculus.
Right, so
That name rings a bell, but
a,
fill me in.
a homunculus is a magically conjured, small, perfectly formed human being. Right? Okay. And you make it. So there are a couple of recipes, but one of them is you take a black chicken's egg and take out a little bit of the chicken protein and put in some of your seed. And then bury it in manure on the 1st of March or something like that. And a homunculus will grow within the egg, break out, and then will be your servant and defend you. Okay, so that's one way of doing a homunculus. The other way is to get mandrake root, wash it in milk and honey, and possibly a bit of blood, and then put it in a flask, and then it will grow into a homunculus and will emerge from the flask a fully formed but miniature human being with magical powers. Now, Jack apparently tried to do one of these and thought that this would give him an edge.
Maybe it's the homunculus that blew him up.
Well, there actually is a little bit about that, because the question is, did he blow himself up or was he blown up? Because the people that he worked for said he was really, really safety conscious. He was very good around explosives. He never put a foot out of line. He always followed the safety procedures. He was very conscious of the damage that they could do. Maybe because he blew himself out of the shed. 10 years beforehand.
And his dorm room.
Yeah, so maybe he really was safety conscious, and maybe this was an outside agency, like, for instance, dare I say it, the FBI. Maybe they just had enough of him and wanted to get him off the books. They fed up following him around.
His wife, that was kind of, I sort of focused on his death because being blown up at 37, there's bound to be some sort of rabbit hole there. And I'm just trying to find where my notes are, because, yeah, here we go. Because Marjorie never accepted the official ruling. She always believed that foul play was involved, right up until she died in 1995. So I think she lived into her early 70s. And she suspected the blast could have been caused deliberately by one of the occult groups that perceived Parsons as some sort of risk or threat. She claimed that just days before his death, Parsons told her he felt like his life was in danger because of his occult work and affiliations. And she stated her belief that the explosion was too massive to just be a simple lab accident, theorizing that a larger explosive device was likely planted in their home. And she also felt that authorities did not properly investigate other possibilities besides an accident due to a lack of understanding about Parsons's occult undertakings. And right up, like I said, in her later years, she continued insisting publicly that her husband's death was not accidental, but rather an act of magic vengeance by occult enemies.
Well, it could have been. It could have been.
And,
it might maybe Hubbard had something to do with it.
Well, yeah, that's But why?
Speculation.
Well, motive. Being the good police officer that you once were, what would the motive be? Because you
Well, I
researched
don't
Hubbard a
think.
bit more than I did.
Yeah, I don't think there's much love lost between Jack and Hubbard after the stealing all his 400k.
But you would think Jack would want to blow Ron up, though. I mean, if anyone was going to get blown up, surely it would be the
Yeah,
other
but
way around.
Hubbard was a bit of a psycho. I think Jack was quite an easygoing sort of guy. You know, he was one of these guys that would lend you his last $10. You know, because you needed it, and he wasn't a great money manager. So I
He
don't
lent
like.
400 grand to a bandit like L. Ron
Well,
Hubbard.
exactly, but you know, Hubbard's the kind of guy that would go, well, you know, I had to give him 3.5 grand back. You know, I can imagine him being pissed at that. So I don't know, Robin. I really don't know. I haven't really done an awful lot of research on homunculus, and I haven't tried to build one, contrary to what anyone may ask. But yeah, I don't
I
know what the
thought
average lifespan of a homunculus is.
a mandrake's actually a real thing. I thought that was something
Mandrake
out of
root.
yeah, I thought something out of Harry Potter.
No, they're real. They're real. Mandrake root's real,
Ah,
and
okay.
it does look a bit like a deformed human. You know, if you dig up the root. Um,
Do they scream when you pull them out of the ground?
I don't believe so. I
Okay, that's a bit
don't believe
disappointing.
so. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. So Jack blew himself up, and it was quite horrific because apparently he lost half his face, his arm, and a foot. Was it?
Yeah, no, they actually found part of his forearm and his foot
Yeah.
in
But he
um
lived. He lived until he got to hospital.
that's not a nice way to die.
So he must have been in agony.
Yeah. Although probably just passed out from the pain, I
Mm.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe he was on enough drugs that he didn't really feel it that much.
But I mean, it's surprising. As I mean, just looking at it, it strikes me that there's something suspicious about that because, like you said, he was extremely safety conscious,
Yeah.
and uh, I think once you've blown yourself up once or twice, you probably develop a sort of keen sense of doing things the right way. And I mean, he had enough money so that his lab in his house was probably really well equipped, and he had every
Yeah.
bit of safety equipment that you would need. And also, if you're tinkering at home, even if you're trying to make rocket fuel, you're not necessarily going to make so much that it could blow your whole house up. You might. I mean, you'd kind of pare it down a little bit because you don't have to mix vast amounts of chemicals together to work out whether you're going to get a reaction. You can do it
Yeah.
on a much smaller
Yeah.
scale, which
Yeah.
you would do, especially if it's your own house. I mean, okay,
Yeah.
if you're at work and you're in a lab, you might be more
Well,
inclined to push it, but
his lab was in the back garden, remember, and the back garden was 25 acres. 25 acres. Can you imagine? 11 bedrooms, 25 acres. That house was massive. I mean, the house isn't there anymore, but that would have been amazing. And then, of course, that was a Californian, basically Agape Lodge, which was the which was Crowley's first lodge was in Scotland, wasn't it, near Inverness? The Agape Lodge.
I'm not. I don't know a huge amount
Yeah,
about Aleister Crowley.
yeah. Crowley had a house up near Inverness. I should go and visit it one day and see, because Crowley is very much into the Ptolemaic version of the Jesus story, because they're all the same.
Mm.
They really are all the same. I mean, you go back to early Babylon, and Egypt, and then Christianity, and then Islam. The stories are all the same, you know.
Yeah,
So everybody's copying the other, and you know,
they
it,
probably
it,
come from a much earlier source. I mean,
yeah,
the because the story of Noah is almost identical to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is Sumerian.
hmm,
So that's
yeah.
that's that's the earliest civilization that archaeologists are prepared to
Oh,
accept.
that's quite interesting. That's quite interesting, Jeff. So Jeff says there's a reference in the Ian of Horus, Crowley-esque that links to Von Braun. I need to have a look at that at some point.
I mean, it's possible that I'm
Yeah.
not saying that there's not a possibility that von Braun was extremely careful to cover up
Yeah,
his
I
any
think
occult ideas, but
I'm not sure that I'm being corrected here, Jeff. Yes, that was the religion that Crowley made from the Egyptian Ptolemaic stories. I think I might be wrong, but I think they were based on a different a different version, and Crowley made his religion and called it that. Um, but yeah,
and he had a surprising number of disciples as well. There's an awful lot
oh
of
yeah,
people that were influenced by and associated with Aleister Crowley, both during his life and
I'm
also since he's died. Because I think he started something that lives on to this day.
I'm getting a bit worried by Jeff here. He seems to have enough a lot of knowledge about Crowley. Are you in this? Because this bunch are still going. This order, Templars, Orientalists are basically, or the Thelemic kind of thing. They're still going. They've still
Yeah.
got lodges, and in fact, they seem to be bigger than they were.
Well, they're kind of like, I don't know, demon Freemasons or something. It's
Yeah,
the demonic side of Freemasonry.
yeah.
But was Crowley demonic? I mean, he doesn't. Everything that I have read about him doesn't make him seem like a particularly nice person.
Yeah, I don't think he was a nice person. Yeah, I think he
He
was
comes
a bit.
across as a selfish, narcissistic arsehole.
I think Parsons is quote, or was it Crowley that was quoted as saying, "Together we shall rule death and hell." So
Hmm.
I
Well, he
think he
said,
was.
"Do what thou want shall be the whole of the law," or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, Jeff says he was a Satanist. Yeah, but when we looked into Satanism, or modern Satanism as it's portrayed today, it seems perfectly reasonable, doesn't it, Ed? Doesn't it?
I don't know about reasonable because you don't know what those creepy weirdos are hiding. But yeah, they make it seem like
Yeah.
Satanism. But it's, to me, it smacks of the same sort of crowd that are trying to have the P added to the LGBTQ plus IX, whatever the
Okay.
hell it is now.
I thought we were getting into some kind of urination cult there.
No, the P as in paedophile
Yeah.
or map, as we're supposed to
Oh
call
right,
them.
like yeah, okay. Let's not go down that route.
Well, no, I'm not trying to go down the rabbit
Yeah.
hole. All I'm saying that is this idea that Satanism is somehow kind of perfectly fine and it's a completely reasonable thing. I just find it disturbing.
Well, I suppose it depends on the terms, doesn't it? It depends on the contract.
Yeah, but why would you associate yourself with? Because they would. I don't know. Like I said, we have already covered
Right.
that one. But
Actually, let's just think about this briefly, right? If we go back to Old Testament, right? God was a bit of a cunt. Don't you think? If you go back to Old Testament God, he wasn't a very nice person.
Well, the thing is that the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament seem to me to be two completely different entities.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Now,
It's like somebody said, "Oh, we got to give this guy a remake because people aren't really liking this." And that kind of happens all the time. It's like, if you think about it, even things like different branches of the religion are like a remake. I mean, you've got Christian and you've got Christianity that split into Protestants and Catholics, but there's way more than that. I mean, there's way more than that, right? But
oh yeah,
I mean,
you've got the Jehovah's Witnesses.
yeah. But that Protestant Catholic division was basically because some guy couldn't keep his pecker in his fucking trousers. Henry VIII. That's all that was. And it was him that
Well,
made.
yeah, but what about Luther?
Yeah, but it all came out of that. That's how the whole country went Protestant, because he couldn't keep his dick in his trousers.
Yeah.
Everything comes down to sex. So maybe Parsons and Crowley and all that have got a thing. Maybe sex is magic. Maybe there's something to do with it. Maybe there's something around it that doesn't enable the powerful and the rich to do the rituals and get what they want.
Well, maybe that's why they keep all of that knowledge secret, and why we have this whole notion of the occult. Because I mean, the occult basically just means hidden knowledge.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe pre-flood, there was a civilization where that knowledge was more widespread for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that the survivors of the flood decided to keep that secret and pass it down and keep it to themselves because of the power that it afforded them. Maybe speculation. But I do know that there is a lot more going on in this perceived universe than what our senses are capable of picking up. Because I mean, even
Oh, of course.
if you just look at how much of the light spectrum humans can actually see, it's a pitifully tiny amount.
Yeah, it is.
And so there could be all sorts of things happening around us, energy exchanges, things that it's like electricity. You can't see electricity going through the cables, but it's there, and we're electric. And
See, electricity is a complete freaking mystery to me, right? Because you know how they explain it as like water flowing down a pipe. That's not how electricity works at all.
no,
It doesn't work like that. And the electrons don't go up and down the wire because they stay with the atoms that they're attached to. So it is a mystery to me. It is. And
I wouldn't.
and then
I can't claim to understand it.
yeah, but then the whole thing. Yeah, I think Robin's right. No one actually understands electricity. Maybe Tesla did, but the thing that seals the deal, right, is wireless power charging. Because
But it's not actually. It's magnetic.
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how it happens, right? There's no physical connection, right? So you got a battery that's depleted, and it gets refilled with what? Because it's never connected to anything.
But also, this technology goes back almost as far as, I mean, they found ancient battery devices in Mesopotamia and places like that are just clay urns with the two electrodes. And I mean, it's the sort of thing that you can
Wrong one. Sorry.
you can create fairly easily yourself. But I think you're right about Tesla having a greater understanding of it than pretty much anyone else.
Yeah. Wee fat shug, you're too late, mate. We've already done that. We've done the demon goggles. So go back into the archives and look for the demon goggles or whatever it's called. But we've already done it, mate.
Now there was. Did you cover Babylon? It's called Babylon Working. One of Parsons' most notorious occult endeavors was the Babylon Working, a series of rituals he performed with Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard in 1946. These rituals aimed to manifest the archetype of the Whore of Babylon to Earth. Such practices highlight the complex intersection of Parsons' scientific brilliance and his deep-seated occult beliefs, which is true. I mean, it's...
So what were they trying to do?
Well, they were trying to manifest the archetype of the Whore of Babylon. I don't know how you manifest an archetype.
What does that mean, Ed? I mean, you're going to have to enlighten me. This is your wheelhouse.
Okay.
Steer me through it.
I don't really know.
You've led me down the garden path.
No. I'm going to find out.
It's like going out. It's like going out on a date and then being told that you're paying and you're not getting a snog.
Well, no, because just no. Oh dear. Um,
While Ed's collecting himself, if you people should feel the need, you can always support us at the detail down below because we do appreciate it. You can now join this channel from as little as 99 pence a month. That's less than the cost of a cup of coffee, much less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Or, as always, you can super chat, you can super thanks, you can drop any number of monies that you would like at kofi.com/chasing descent, or indeed patreon.com/chasing descent. Coffee's preferred because it takes less money. But yeah, if you've got the means and wherewithal and you enjoy these things, then please feel free to drop us a little remuneration. It's always appreciated. And you'll get a certificate joining you to the fine country of Veridora. Now, Ben and I had a serious chat the other night actually about Veridora, and he's wanting to bring in the death penalty.
right. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if we should or not. I mean, I'm quite against it, but
I'm actually for it, but I'm not for executing the wrong people. But
yeah, see,
I
that's a
certainly
problem.
think I certainly think there are situations such as the one that we've lived through for the last 4 years where actually that's the only reasonable punishment for some of the people and what they've done. And I'm not going to start talking about names and stuff and get us all into trouble.
No, I know
But
what you're saying, and
um,
this is where we differ, right? Because people think I'm maybe being soft and not wanting to kill these, or for the death penalty. But my point is, if you do that, you're letting them off easy because they're not suffering anymore. So my point would be to keep them incarcerated and make them suffer for the rest of their life.
why the hell do we have to pay for it?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, don't then. Don't pay for it. Just feed them scraps. Have them have them in pits like zoos. And just throw scrap. The public can throw them scraps and watch them fight for it.
Okay,
A bit
that's a
like his
bit
gift.
dark.
Well, it
Right.
might be a bit dark, but is that not appropriate?
Um.
If these people have done such horrible things?
Yes. Yeah. But I think the thing with that is that if you allow people to do that, it's not just the people who are suffering, but the people who are actually doing become corrupted by that fact. I don't think that makes them better people.
I'm not trying to save the world here.
Well, no, I know, but I think that when you see people do things like that, the, my instinct is to try and be the better person. Now, that doesn't mean to necessarily say that I don't think that they are deserving of the death penalty, but I don't know about the whole torture aspect to it. But if we just
Okay.
go back to just going
Yeah.
back to the whole Whore of Babylon archetype thing that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
went to, the term originates from the book of Revelation in the New Testament, which metaphorically describes a woman named Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and abominations of the earth. And in Revelation 17:18, this figure symbolizes the evil, excessive immorality, and materialistic seductions that the author associates with the ancient pagan city of Babylon. More broadly in biblical literature, Babylon represents a cultural rejection of God's principles and the rise of excessive wealth, idolatry, and human corruption. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, a little bit.
Kind of does a bit. Anyway, the Whore of Babylon carrying a golden cup became an influential symbolic embodiment of these lures of sin and unfaithfulness to the divine. In medieval Christian iconography and literature, this archetype often personified the perceived threats of heresy, paganism, and hostility of the secular world to the church, which kind of the stuff that Crowley was doing could kind of be seen in a bit of that light.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, it evolved into a complex allegory warning against seduction by political powers, material excess, loss of spiritual values, and turning away from religious faithfulness. So, those guys trying to summon the Whore of Babylon is. I mean, why would you want to bring back the mother of prostitutes and abominations of the earth? I mean, surely there's enough of those already.
when you say that, and I can't help it, right? I just can't help it. When you say that, I immediately think of Angela Rayner. I don't know why.
Uh, yeah. Now that you mention it,
That could be a possible meme for you.
yeah, it's well. The thing
The
is
whore
that
of Babylon.
I'm gonna end up spending so much time memeing those two and that whole cacophony of cockwombles that I just no. I spend as little time as possible trying to look at her. To be frank, she creeps me out. I've got done a meme of her. Let's see if I can pull
Oh,
it
come
up
on, you
quickly.
would. You know you would.
Well, no, but I've done one which I can actually share. Which this basically sums up how I see those two perfectly. Let me get it up on my screen and then I'll share it. Where are we? I mean, a lot of people, if people have followed me on Twitter, they'll know this one because I share it quite a lot. Because it's also, I don't know,
So,
there's
so
something
actually, have you?
spineless about
Yeah,
Starmer.
yeah. Have you ever read or listened to Terence McKenna?
No.
Maybe you should. He's um he's quite interesting. I mean, he's long dead, but he was into he was into certain creative medicinal products, shall we say? But he's quite good. I quite enjoy listening to him. I think he's quite enlightening. Um, and he talks about a lot of different things. But I think he's worth having a listen to.
I've put that meme up. I don't know how to
Yeah,
share it with the group.
I can do that. Hold on. There.
That one. That kind of sums up Angela Rayner in my eyes. And there's actually another one. There, that one, which is a little bit more gruesome.
Yeah, that's
Um,
quite good.
but yeah, that's. I mean, he's.
Yeah,
I,
he's not really. To be fair, he's a bit of a wet blanket, isn't he?
mm, and the worst thing about him is it's buy one get two free.
Yeah,
Although there's some, yeah, and that was. Can see it's just a little bit of a. This is another one. There are a few pictures of him looking at Rayner, and yeah, they just creep me out. The whole lot of them. So you'll be seeing a lot of him,
yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
right? I'll stop.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So, yeah. Is there anything else that we need to talk about with Jack? Have we covered them? I think we've
I
covered them quite well.
I think so too. I mean, we've covered his early life. We've covered his various attempts to blow himself up and his slightly weird occult practices, and him actually blowing himself up, which is kind of a fitting way for someone like him to go. And
Yeah,
my personal, if I had to put a kind of come down on one side or the other, I find his death very suspicious. I
yeah,
mean,
definitely.
nobody knows for sure, but I suspect foul play. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think he blew himself up. I think there was a an evil hand in it, whether it be supernatural or more down to earth, and probably at the hands of the FBI. To be fair,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, the fact that the FBI were very quick to dismiss it, I mean
Hmm.
that to me, in any other situation, that would be screaming government involvement. Now, whether there was maybe it's as simple as what you said, that maybe the FBI were just totally sick of having to follow him around and listening to all his perverted goings on, and just
Hmm.
thought, let's just get rid of him. He's a weirdo.
Yeah, yeah. But by
Um,
that point, it was after the war, so they didn't need him so much. They had von Braun on staff at NASA. JPL Aerojet was already established. So they probably didn't need. He probably served his purpose.
But also, it's not really the government style. I mean, they do a lot of things. They do the plane crashes and the car crashes and the heart attacks and the
Yeah, but
snipers'
this is
bullets.
but this is
But
obvious.
actually,
This is how else would you do it? This looks like an accident. It's plausible deniability. It's got to be the way to do it. I mean, the guy has a history of blowing himself up, albeit tens of years ago, but he's done it before. And the thing is, he's away from other people because he's in his lab, his private lab, in his own garden. It's an easy target.
mm,
Yeah, I think it all stacks up. All stacks up as a government hit. But
it
hey, that's only my viewpoint.
sure. I mean, his wife certainly didn't think it was the government, but then she wanted to stay safe, so it might be in her interest to point the
Yeah,
finger of blame elsewhere.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and maybe she had an axe to grind with someone. I mean,
yeah,
apparently, from what I've researched, her sort of occult, because she was a author, poet, something. She was an artist.
yeah, yeah.
But she was,
I mean, she was into it as well,
yeah,
because
no,
she.
and she stayed into it right the way through her life as well. It wasn't something that she stopped when he died. Um, and yeah, she was 30 when he died in the explosion. And after his death, she became deeply involved in the occult and avant-garde art scenes in 1950s Los Angeles. Um, Painting, she was an artist, painting,
Hmm.
poetry, acted in films, and remained devoted to Thelema. Thelema?
Yeah, whatever
I
you
never
want.
know how to pronounce that.
Yeah,
And then in 1963, she remarried to conman and occultist Jet Renault, aka Hyologo Laminam. No idea who he is. But they divorced a few years later, and she basically kept painting right until the end, and died at the age of 73. So there's no, I mean, she wasn't in the house. I did check. That was one of my first things I wanted to check was whether his
yeah,
wife got blown up as well. But she
yeah. It
was,
wasn't. It wasn't the house that was blown up. It was his lab in the back garden.
yeah, but she was. She also wasn't in the house.
Oh, right, she wasn't there. Right.
Yeah, no, she was visiting friends or away somewhere, which
Yeah,
initially I thought was a bit suspicious, but um, there doesn't seem to be any kind of suspicion or inkling that she had anything to do
yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah. So he was a bit of a wild guy, and I think he had for all his short life, I think he had a good one. I think he enjoyed it. He lived it to the full.
I
Um,
certainly did that.
he certainly, yeah. And what a time, what a time to be creating these things.
1950s Los Angeles must have been an absolutely mental place. Have you
Yeah.
seen the film? Oh, it's with Margot Robbie with Babylon. It's called.
No, I don't think I have.
It's crazy. I put it on. I wasn't sure. I mainly put it on because I think she's fit, but um, and it's a crazy film. I don't know how historically accurate it is, but it tracks some of these wild parties that they were having and the kind of debauchery and stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's also the beginning of Hollywood, and I mean, a lot of it was nowhere near as developed as it is now. I mean, a lot of the film sets back then were just
Yeah.
open, like massive open fields and stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, crazy time to be alive, and also some crazy people to associate with. I mean, actually sitting there and sort of getting off your tits on LSD with L. Ron Hubbard and Heinlein and people like that. I mean,
Yeah. Ray
some of the stuff
Bradbury
they
and
must have come out with, I bet it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall.
oh yeah. I mean, what a time.
Mm.
It's what a time to be alive, and then later on when you get Timothy Leary and all that, and I mean, it just it just sometimes you feel you've missed out, because everything's a little bit stayed. The 80s were a good laugh. The 70s and 80s were a good laugh, but I don't think they were a, they lit a touch paper to the 60s or 50s or.
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't particularly enjoy the 80s, but that's for personal reasons. But I thought the 90s were fun
Yeah,
in
the
in
80s
their
were
own
okay.
way.
I,
But
I enjoyed the 80s. They were okay.
but I mean, I remember a very small part of the 70s, not really enough. But
The
yeah, I mean, to be
70s were brilliant. I must
yeah,
admit.
it's like some of the stories my dad told me about being in London in the 60s, and I mean, yeah, just all kinds of crazy stuff.
So Robin's asking, will we do the fine young things?
What are the fine young things?
Is this a bright young things or
I'm
something? I'm not.
I'm
I'm not
almost
quite
I'm
sure.
almost scared to ask.
We're going to have a look. We're going to have a look around it. But yeah, Robin,
Well,
fire.
we're always up for covering interesting topics, so if people do have suggestions, they're always welcome.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where we
And
got
the
Shug's going with
stage.
that. That's a bit. No, that's going a bit OTT. I don't think I want to go down that route.
Yeah, we do have to keep it within some bounds of proprietary at least.
Ergot's something that grows on wheat. It's
Yeah, it's a fungus.
yeah, it's a fungus that grows on wheat and gives you hallucinogenic.
Hmm.
A hallucinogenic time and usually kills you. I mean, this whole village has been wiped out in medieval times by ergot.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also one of the more interesting explanations for where the whole witches on broomstick
Yeah, yeah,
comes from is from essentially pagan witches rubbing the ergot on a broomstick and then
yeah. I know.
doing
Yeah.
some hobby horsing or something.
You told me this the last time. Is this what the Finns are up to when they have their hobby horse championship? That explains it. That explains it.
It's the hobby horsing. At the
That's
end of
it,
the
mate.
day,
We've jumped the
mean-
shark.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people are allowed to do whatever they want to do
Yeah.
as long as they're not harming anyone else, and everybody else is allowed to laugh at them.
Yeah. So, with that,
Yeah.
I think we're calling it. So, thank you very much for attending this. It's been great to have you here, and as always, it's been great for you.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. I can't contain it, I'm coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer. What you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build